Thank you very much for joining us during this afternoon in Asia, morning in Europe. Your presence means a lot for us, considering the massive number of webinars and live streams, right, that we are having lately. So I can see a few familiar names here in the participants. Thank you, guys. A few clients. So we will really make it worth. A quick intro for myself. I'm Marcelo Bittencourt, Managing Director of Green Park Content here in Asia, and I'm based in Singapore. I like to say that I joined the company when GPC was just a PPT deck idea, almost 7 years ago. And I have over 20 years of experience in digital startups, publication, and SEO, working with brands like Pepsi, Danone, Nestlé, and Unilever. For those that are new to GPC, we help organizations all around the world to connect brands with their audience through amazing content that performs. As easy as that. You have your audience in one side, you have your brand in the other side, and we help you to build this bridge according to the size of the bridge that you need to connect with them. We run a series of webinars through this year, and today we're going to explore the untapped opportunity that is organic search and brand publishing. So in the agenda, today we'll be covering the significant opportunities that exist, right? The options that you have to capitalize on them, and some practical points for how to get it right, divided in these three parts. So the content landscape, that how will Google changes impact brands over the next years, and what will be the biggest challenges facing content teams. This will be presented by our head of search, our SEO Yoda, and amazing photographer as well, that is Jonathan Fink. You can follow his Instagram to take a look. The part two, acting like a publisher. How do you overcome these challenges by evolving your content strategy to act more like a publisher? That will be presented by our chief strategist, Unilever Insider, and the guy that everybody at GPC wants to talk to before go to a client meeting, Ian Colvin. Thank you, Ian. Engaging creative assets is the third part. How do you apply these insights that Jonathan and Ian will talk to us? And a few examples of who is getting it right, presented by our creative and brand strategy director, multi-talented person, Fi Hussein, that is pushing herself to teach our accounts team to stop using 5 types of fonts on presentation decks. So they are amazing. I'm sure you guys will enjoy this next minutes with them. Let's quick introduce yourselves. Jonathan, do you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm head of search at Green Park Content. I've been doing SEO since almost before it was a thing, going back to 2001. It's my job within Green Park Content to make sure that all the assets we produce, whether it's content, visuals, video, are actually aligned with performance and help clients to achieve their strong ROI through search engines.
Fi?
Cool. Hi, my name is Fi. I'm the Creative and Brand Strategy Director for GPC. Previously, I was with Ogilvy. I was the Creative Director there. We started the GPC office in Singapore 2 years ago. My role is to help brands like Unilever connect with the audience in the most engaging way.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ian. I joined GPC earlier this year after 24 years in brand and digital marketing in Unilever. So I understand brands well. I understand how they grow, and very excited to be talking with you today.
Great. So if you have any questions, just before I pass back to Ian, at any time, please type in the QA box that you have below, and we will make sure that we will answer them throughout the session today. So let's get cracking to the webinar, handing back to you, Ian. So just to better set the scene of the session and explain exactly what mean to untapped opportunity that is brand publishing, please.
Thanks, Marcelo. So, I mean, in my experience, having been in the brand and digital marketing space for a while on the client side, organic search is a neglected and misunderstood tool in the marketeer's toolbox. And I speak from personal experience. Lack of training, I think, is one reason, but also a perception that it's not as exciting as other communication channels. Yet it's a treasure trove of opportunity and highly measurable. Put simply, consumers tell you what they want in search and what they want more or less of over time. It's like live research, but more importantly, live sales leads to sell your brands and products. Most advertising, as we know, hits a passive, disinterested audience. Search queries, on the other hand, are made by consumers who want or need something. And marketeers really should look at search from the lens of almost sales. This is an audience of potential consumers for your products, and the volumes can be huge. Across some categories, search volumes run into the billions each year. The majority of brands essentially try to win only in brand search terms, but when we look into most categories, 90% of search volume is unbranded search terms. Consumers wanting help, information, inspiration, or education in that category. Sounds like a rich opportunity, right? But what many marketers don't yet see is that winning in organic search is hugely cheaper than PPC, usually around 80% cheaper and sustainable over time. So my opening challenge to you for this session is, what is your search share of search voice? If you don't know, you should. It's a critical measure of a brand's health and key to unlock growth. So with that introduction, to set the scene, let me hand to Jonathan, our head of search, to talk about changes coming in the content search landscape.
So there's a unique feature about being a search marketeer, and that's that nothing ever stands still for more than 5 minutes. And it's been the same for the last 15, 20 years. Having said that, the last 2 years have been probably the most changeable and the most revolutionary years for search. And our prediction is that that is just set to increase. Things are not going to sort of calm down anytime soon. So we ask the question here, what are the biggest challenges facing brands in relation to organic and paid media? So one of the really big ones on the horizon, and this is one you've almost certainly heard of, is the cookie problem. So as users and even legislators and governments have demanded greater privacy and better transparency, choice, control over how their data is used, this represents a huge challenge for the media industry, because paid advertising in particular relies extensively on cookies that are dropped on users' machines that basically allow us to understand everything about them, what they do, when they do it, what they buy, why they buy it. This is the absolute sort of magic that makes modern marketing work. The trouble is, coming down the road very soon, third-party cookies are going to be switched off. They're no longer going to be effective. Google's been pretty clear in announcing its intention with regards to those. So what will that mean? It'll mean that paid media will be more expensive, maybe even much more expensive, and it'll be far less targeted under the changes that are coming. So that sounds like some kind of scary story you tell children. But this is real, this is happening, and marketers all over the world are trying to plan for what they do when this actually lands. First-party cookies are therefore going to gain much more importance, and that places organic search center stage, because if you, as Ian said, gain your audience through searches, you not only have an engaged audience clicking on your site. You also control a lot of the information you get about that audience, and you have the opportunity to lock them into your ecosystem through getting them to sign up into some kind of client zone or club or newsletter or whatever it happens to be, or even subscribe to your social channels. Google AdWords is likely to remain unaffected by third parties, so you will still be able to do the remarketing, retargeting, but an already inflationary market is going to get far, far worse, because if people are withdrawing their ad spend from various aggregators and paid media platforms and programmatic display and putting it into AdWords because that is much more reliable and potentially cheaper at the start, that's just going to drive the prices up and up and up. So this is a significant thing to be aware of. Next, the next nightmare we're going to talk about is technicalities of SEO. Now, when marketers think about their website, their performance and their audience, they're usually thinking about how it looks, and sometimes they'll be thinking about what text they've got on the page and how compelling that is. The trouble is, unless your site has seamless technical SEO, none of that investment in content and design and video assets is really going to work because Google is going to effectively penalize your site and put one of your competitors higher up in the Google search results. So what do you need for seamless tech SEO? Well, you need to concentrate on site speed and have a best-in-class site speed within your category. You need to be compliant, both with search engine demands, but also with usability. You need seamless indexation by Google. You need to observe all the privacy laws within the countries you operate in. You need to employ the latest advanced techniques like schema, and you need to have lean coding style and be incredibly agile, because what is classed as tech best practice is changing all the time and changing incredibly rapidly. And of course, we now live in a mobile first world. Your website needs to work perfectly on mobile devices and answer the user experience and intent on mobile, as well as being compatible with a huge wealth of browsers and devices that are now in play across the world. So a small challenge, not really, it's a huge challenge for most brands, and most brands are actually failing at tech SEO, and it is having a huge impact on their potential to perform. And then we come to the third nightmare, which is voice search. Now, again, you may have heard this as the next big thing. It's been the next big thing for a while, and it's not big yet. So you might sort of be thinking you can tuck that into the back drawer and forget all about it. Actually, what Google's been doing with voice search is experimenting with artificial intelligence and its sort of deep understanding of language and human behavior. The risk to Google is less because fewer people are using voice search, but what we believe is going to happen is that the technology and the techniques that have been developed on voice search are going to make their way into other search environments like desktop and mobile. Now, why should that scare you? First of all, we had believed that it would probably converge with traditional search, but no, it's actually got further apart. Now, why is that? Why are results up to 80% different in, let's say, the first 10 results of Google? Well, it's because Google is understanding now what people are satisfied with, what results are much more valuable to them because of this semantic AI. In fact, in surveys, 26% of users were, 26% of queries were served a better result under voice search. So you can guarantee that this technology is going to make it across the Google ecosystem, because Google is all about satisfying user intent and keeping its users happy. And the real challenge here is that on average, in that new world of search, brand websites are 6 positions lower than they are on the current desktop environment. Now, imagine you're ranked in position 2, for instance, or even 1, you could be getting a click-through rate of 35%, maybe 25% from that top position in Google. If your result drops down 6 positions, you may be getting less than 1% of that search opportunity. So this is a huge, huge threat for non-branded search terms. So here's a quick recap of these nightmare scenarios. So search results are increasingly driven by structured information, and your content and technology must reflect this. Brands are struggling for visibility, and this is only going to get worse. Paid media is losing its precision and its impact, but it is set to become much more expensive. As you all know, it already goes up year on year, but this is going to accelerate. And the technical requirements are increasingly challenging for brands. Many brands are locked into a legacy technologies, and you're going to find in coming months and years that these technologies are not adequate to the challenge. Big tech stacks like Adobe, Magento, and so on, these are not going to be agile enough for you to compete in this new world.
Thank you, Jonathan. You used the word nightmare twice in that section, I counted, which I assume is you're being topical because it's Halloween coming up.
That's right. I like to be topical.
I think what you covered is very insightful. It's also a bit of a worrying journey into some big changes taking place that will affect the landscape and affect brands, and those brands need to take action to avoid being kind of squeezed out in search. Owning consumer data, it's always been a challenge for FMCGs because they're not directly talking to consumers. But now it's going to get worse unless they take action and further kind of erode the connection with consumers. Yet, if you place focus on organic search, if you choose the right strategy and you execute it well, the opportunities are there. And the key, in our view, and my view, is to act like a publisher. So we're going to have a quick look at what brand publishing actually means, how you identify the opportunity, you create the strategy, and then you move into production and going live. I'll cover production only briefly since Fee is going to talk on that in more depth. The Google algorithm likes sites that give people what they need. Kind of obvious, really. So publishers and e-com sites do well. And being a publisher means, above all, being audience first. Now, as brand marketeers, we think brand first. It's ingrained in our thinking that we can't even see it. But in many situations, that's an asset because it makes the brand manager an advocate of their brand and helps drive single-minded communication in advertising, but not in organic search. To the 90% of category searches that don't include a brand mention. Here, you need to be audience first, user-led. So tangibly, what does that mean? It means writing articles about topics your category is interested in and are searching for. Interesting articles that people want to read, and then they'll arrive at your site. They'll go more into your site. It doesn't mean your brand can't be mentioned, but your brand is not the focus of the article. It's secondary. And these articles need to be authentic, written in an editorial tone of voice that's believable, as if you were a magazine or a newspaper. When writing is staged or corporate or overly brand-led, consumers see straight through it. And these articles also need to be published frequently and consistently. That's what publishers do, and that's what Google likes. Always on in marketing language. And always on, it remains a struggle since we as marketeers think quarterly campaigns. And this is why we often get asked by clients to set up editorial teams that can just be 1 or 2 people who are empowered to write without the need for sign-offs of every article, but respecting guardrails of what can and cannot be said by the company and the brand. So frequency and consistency of publishing editorial articles is very important. And then finally, the writing has to be engaging. We have expert writers who are experts across different fields who can write articles that keep people reading right down to the bottom. And if you want to take a look at this in practice, check out All Things Hair, a really successful brand publishing site that we run for Unilever. And we have editorial teams all around the world writing articles that are performance-led and include mentions of brands, and where consumers spend a long time reading each article. So what's the path to becoming a brand publisher? Well, first you need an objective assessment of the opportunity at a category search level. What is the category from a search perspective? What keywords, what topics, what themes does it include? What's primary and what's secondary? And what type of consumer demographic is searching? And what lies behind the actual keywords? What is the user intent behind the search? How large is the category? Where is there high competition within it? And where is there low competition for keywords? Who is the competition and how well are they doing compared to you? This detailed insight shows you where the opportunity is to perform better in organic search. It also shows where it's better to have a standalone content hub, like All Things Hair, or simply a stronger publishing presence on your brand.com. And then this assessment also defines the taxonomy that you want to deliver against, because you might decide not to go after areas of high competition, but to go after a sweet spot where there is an untapped opportunity. Critical in this phase is also to model the investment and the performance that can be expected. So we do a lot of work to model how many articles you need to produce to get what kind of traffic, and therefore how much that will cost. So that is itself a really important exercise. The second phase is to define the overall proposition and platform that will deliver on that opportunity. If we talk about a separate content hub, this means designing branding routes, creating naming, logo as part of a visual identity for that new content hub proposition. And then testing concepts, and then either upgrading the brand.com or building a new site, and one that is really, really fast. And then thirdly, into production and publishing, always on. And this obviously includes not just content production, but ongoing management of the site. So it keeps being upgraded, and technically it's very fast and optimized for search, and potentially email newsletter programs. So you're building directly addressable consumer data. It's important to say that the outcome of the opportunity assessment may not be that you need a separate content hub like All Things Hair. Content can be housed on different types of platform. Brand.com can be transformed into a content hub that is more user-led. There are quite often some barriers to this, however. One of them is brand-centric thinking. If you can move the slide forward, please, Marcelo. One is brand-centric thinking and internal restrictions. Because if it's a brand.com, you may just be thinking it all has to be talking about the brand. And also, as Jonathan mentioned, many big brand websites are on slow enterprise IT platforms, whereas to win in search, you need to have an ultra high performance site. So when there's a big enough opportunity, and especially when there are multiple brands that a client has within one category, a content hub can be the preferred option with a really comprehensive user-led taxonomy and a fast platform. And if needed, it can be run at arm's length from you as a client, or managed closely depending on your preference. And then the final type of content platform, so there's brand.com, standalone content hubs like All Things Hair, and then DTC hubs. Obviously, that's pure e-com and very well regarded by Google, since it provides both information and e-com, which is what they love. So just to recap on this section, organic search strategy starts with an objective assessment, a category assessment. Content needs to be led by user intent, and acting like a publisher requires new capabilities for brand owners. Now let me hand to Fee, our Creative and Brand Strategy Director.
Thanks, Ian. Today I'll talk about what you would consider when producing creative assets. So when we have the SEO team identify the opportunity for the brands, we need to understand the target audience we are talking to, what they're looking for, as what Ian mentioned. It could be educational, inspirational, and we need to create amazing content that users would engage with. How they spend time with us, they consume the information, they have to keep coming back for more. So that's where the creative plays an important role at this stage. Using the data that we have to create amazing content that performs, I will share some examples of who is getting it right in the space, and hopefully you can use that as inspiration to start thinking about your brand. So we know that there's millions of contents being published every minute, but it's whether it's interesting enough or engaging enough for your audience to stop and engage with it. See, everything that we shared to this point is crucial to perform on search. So we get people to the site and we get people to the content, but how we engage them further is important and crucial as well. So we look at how the different type of content would then resonate with the audience. So we look at things like photography, videography that would enrich the content hub and drive more engagement. Let's find out what Google has to say for the year that we have in search. I think the audio is not playing. Basically, where do you start? Creativity and planning. We need to understand the audience, the target audience. As you can see, we can learn what people are searching for and create content around that. And it's not necessary to always talk about your product. I think Ian mentioned this, it has to be what people are searching for, right? It's audience first. And in this case, we can see earlier this year with the lockdown, the way people are searching for things, they're looking for heroes, looking for hope that applies across the board, but the answers can be different for different markets. So it's also important to look at localizing your content. So brands can look at what people are searching for and create content around that space so that it's relevant to your target audience. Next slide. Once we have the list of topics that we've identified, all the opportunity on the online sphere, we then break it down into how we're actually going to approach the content. So when we're talking about the editorial content, we look at the writing style, the tone of voice, the personality you want to take on. It's important that your personality or the persona that you have for a website really aligns with the brands that you're talking to. So how do you choose to speak to them is going to affect how they're going to react back to you. And these are the kind of things, the kind of nuances that we start to break out at this point. And then we look at exploring cultural references and expert opinions that they might be actually be interested in reading about. So what do they stand for as a brand? What do you stand against? What do you want to talk about? And all of these kind of things lead to the persona itself and how do you actually communicate with the audience. And then of course, one of the important things is visual imagery, whether it's video, design, it's really important. As I think Jonathan also mentioned earlier, SEO bring the audience to the content, but how do we keep them interested? And you want to be able to make sure that they engage when they are already, connecting or interacting with your audience. It has to be interactive. Here's an example of an inspirational piece of content that we have gotten all the right information to perform. So in terms of ingredients, people are searching for these top ingredients in Indonesia with exactly the same piece of information. How do you visualize it? So as you can see, the top portion of this infographic has all the information to show, to inspire people, what are the type of ingredients that you can make. Exactly the same information at the bottom, but can you tell what makes it more engaging? The bottom one, visually more appealing, more inspiring for audience to read and share. Which one would you be more engaged with? Next.
I thought you will give us some time to think and answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Before I answer button, I like that. Okay, thank you, Max.
So let me talk about what is the type of content that generates high engagement. We talk about getting people, understanding people from search. We talked about creating content that we understand from search and then lending them to whatever they're searching for. But then how do we create that engagement which makes them really interested? So these are the four key ideas when thinking about content. Trending topics, things that is happening right now. These are things that people resonate the most because it just happened. So when brands create content around that, they can relate to it immediately. This is something, the second pillar, content that teaches you something. Tutorials, very popular. People always search for how to do this, how to do that, how do I braid my hair? So these are high engagement content. And this can be, again, pieces that combine from editorial to videos that sits on your website. Content that evoke emotion. Important when you create any piece of content, it has to touch you, whether is it fun, whether is it emotional, it has to spark that emotion. I always tell this to the creative team when you're creating, especially for food videos or food content, when you publish it, ensure that, it's so delicious that they want to lick it off the phone, right? So that's when, it's really cool. And I think across all of this, we look at content that inform, educate, inspire, and excite. And the next slide, I'm going to show a video that I think encompass all of these four things. Let's see.
봄이 내려온다. 장님 깊은 골로 대한 짐승이 내렸다. 봄은 얼숭덜숭 뿌리는 잔뜩 핫팔이 넘고 해머리 흔들며 전동 같은 앞다리 봉화 같은 뒷발로 양기 찌어지고 새낙 같은 발톱으로 잔디뿌리 왕모래를 촤르르르르.
Thank you. So this is a kind of video that it gets you excited. It draws you in, it makes people curious, it keeps their attention. And then at the end of it, you realize it's so simple, the video. It is just a group of dancers that is dancing at all the different locations. This is a tourism video, actually, content that is to visit Korea. So it is so simple. Sometimes you don't need to spend a lot of time, thinking about, okay, so how do I, do maybe like a photo shoot or of the different location. You can be creative in this sense. And this is shareable content as well. Lastly, I will talk about content that you can create that is shareable. And when we create shareable content, we have in mind where it's going to sit, whether it's on website or social. So it's important to create content that is liquid, that are liquid assets, right? So you can use it on your website, whether is it brand.com or not, and you can also use it on social, on YouTube, on all the different platforms. So it is something that you can, create and produce and think about when you're actually producing this content. So shareable content, make your content useful, inspire your audience, tell a story with your content that appeals to the audience value, and validate your audience opinions and get involved in the content itself. So user-generated content is very interesting. We always use that even for all things hair. We have influencers or people who create the content because they love the product so much, and they become the influencers and they become your ambassador of the brand. And we can always use that content to create content pillars and content, editorial content on your website as well. Next slide I'm going to show you is to share with you that good content don't have to be very expensive. So during the lockdown, a lot of clients came to us and said, okay, they have budget cuts because of the lockdown and because they don't want to spend too much time, so much budget anymore because we can't shoot anymore, right? And so there are a lot of ways that you can create content without having to shoot. The video with Selena Gomez is actually shot using iPhone. And she did
Gomez, a singer, an actress. Who is Selena Gomez?
Selena Gomez is a singer. She did a music video. oh my God. Marcelo, different age group.
Yeah.
And she did a music video using iPhone that she shot. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive. With the Clear video that we did here, we actually helped Clear. They came to us during the lockdown and they said they needed to create content with Ronaldo doing tutorial, but we couldn't shoot him anymore because of the lockdown. And so we used existing assets that we have of him. And we actually did an illustration of him giving the tutorial, as you can see, and we did it really short in a quick, short turnaround time, that these assets are then used on social and editorial as well on the All Things Fair platform. So again, I think this is important that we look at when we talk about being creative and creating assets and creative assets, we don't have to limit ourselves to, okay, we need to have a shoot. Sometimes it's not necessary for us to have a shoot. We just need to think about what is the objective, what is the message, what is it we're trying to say, and we should be able to come up with something really with this.
Also important to say about Clear Campaigner was set by the need, right? The search listening, right? That we did, that a few posts come viral because people are, of course, cutting their head at home, right? And Ronaldo video also, right, come out and become viral.
During the lockdown, I was like, okay, how do I cut my hair and go out, right? So this is where I think brands look at this as an opportunity, and quickly come in and say, okay, let's create a quick tutorial with Ronaldo. And then since he also posted something on his Instagram. Recap. So key takeaway in creating engaging creative assets, it's important to define your target audience and create content that they can relate to. Creative assets drive better engagement, be it articles, graphic, or videos, has to be creative. And to produce liquid content that is shareable across the various platforms. Now, back to Ian to summarize our session today.
Thank you very much, Fee. So let me kind of close before we have a bit of time for Q&A to sum up the reasons why brands should act like publishers to help drive organic search more successfully. Publishing drives quality traffic done well for your brand because consumers seek it out. They want to be there because they've been searching for it, rather than passively receiving advertising they didn't ask for. Huge difference. And this is a big benefit. And our analysis shows that engagement levels are around 4 times higher than pure kind of brand-led communication. But the traffic also has a media value in paid media equivalents. And usually when you compare the cost of running the content organically versus what it would have cost in paid media, it's at least 75% cheaper. So it's extremely beneficial from a cost perspective and something the media teams should be really interested in. Also, by utilizing the first-party data on site visitors, you can drive retargeting. You can drive retargeting efficiencies, but also you can get to a much sharper target than you could buy if you were without that data. A much sharper target because you know they've been engaging on a very specific topic, or let's imagine a hairstyle or a hair type, or a type of food that you couldn't buy if you were to go directly to the media buyers, media sellers. So you can get to a sharper target than you could otherwise buy programmatically, but you can also, therefore, and as a result, you can drive an efficiency in retargeting, which has a value. And given the impending lack of access to third-party cookies, brands are going to need to do this going forwards. So this hungry, targeted audience is the perfect environment to introduce your brands. It's an editorial environment, and therefore will drive brand consideration and purchase intent more successfully. But they also bring consumer data at a category level in terms of cookie and email data and insights on what people are searching for. Most brand owners who are not e-com business have very limited first-party data. So this is a big competitive advantage. A performance-led publishing approach, which is what we are preaching, is literally consumers, it's always hunting for what consumers are searching for. It's live research. And if you can connect that insight back into the organization, it can also inform many areas, including innovation. And then the final benefit, if we talk about having a standalone content hub, it can be monetized as your traffic grows. Next to the potential of direct e-com, you can also monetize in a hybrid of different ways. Branded content partnerships, where you sell the audience you've built to brands and create content, but also pure display advertising and affiliate marketing links. So in summary, I mean, my personal view, which is why I've kind of moved into this field, is that as a marketing industry, we've not scratched the surface of the brand publishing opportunity. We produce too much generic advertising that is ignored by consumers and does not connect or engage. Done right, brand publishing gives brands the opportunity to do just that, to connect, to engage with a willing audience and help make your brand famous, building a huge value in media value and data. But because it's audience-led rather than brand-led thinking that leads to that outcome, it needs leadership and strategic thinking from marketeers. And there's a strategic imperative now, as Jonathan eloquently explained earlier, with this sort of squeeze by Google on brands coming. Now is the time to act or lose search relevance, targeting efficiencies, and the opportunity for data. Back to you, Marcelo.
Thank you, Ian. I had a lot of comments I saw to do here, but I'm seeing the Q&A coming and also the pre-questions that you guys sent to us when you registered to the event. So, and we have just 11 minutes. So let's, thank you so much, Ian, Fee, Jonathan. I think it was, it's really great to review everything that is about to come, everything that is happening, right? And the first question, there's, of course, there's a lot of questions, pre-questions that are related to ROI and budget. I will sit a little bit on that. But there is one that is Google just got sued by DOJ, Department of Justice. Apple new interest in privacy. How will this affect this stream of work from another giant company like Unilever, who is embarking on data collection journey? I think the Google being sued is not actually related to data. It's more like an antitrust sue that US is open against Google. But I think what is more related here is to GDPR and the European legislation against data, and a lot related to what Jonathan also mentioned, right? That is Google killing third-party data is actually a result of that, right?
Yeah, I don't think those court actions are affecting what we've said at all. I mean, there will be individual actions in different countries to protect privacy, but in fact, these lawsuits strengthen the case we've made. You know, as it becomes more and more problematic using third-party data for which you don't have explicit permission, then it shifts the focus on you generating first-party data where you do get that explicit sign-up of your users and permission. So it really strengthens the case.
Absolutely. Budget, let's talk a little bit about budget, because I have two questions I can put together here. How much budget resource does a brand need to allocate to deliver on this approach? If you are looking to become a publisher, what resource do you need? I will say depends, but Ian, you have any?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, you know, when I kind of came into this field, I was actually surprised by how little budget you need to have quite a big impact, because we're not talking, in terms of winning organic search, we're talking about writing articles on an ongoing basis. And so that is a lot more cost effective than producing video. So of course, the answer is it depends, because when we do the category opportunity assessment for a client, we will look at the whole category and we will find space where you can play to win, where there is an opportunity to play to win that is also, you know, on message, on brand in terms of needs that you're delivering against. The size of that can vary. The size of that opportunity can vary, which practically means the number of keywords you're going to go after, and then that will have an impact on the cost. But I think, you know, the starting point, it's actually pretty modest. I mean, we're talking about producing a series of articles every month and publishing them, and that isn't a huge expense. But, you know, the real answer to the question is, let's have a chat. And, you know, what we would do is look at the category, assess it, find the opportunity, and we will then model what you're going to need to produce and how much that will cost to deliver a certain traffic target. So you know what you're getting into before you do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a mindset game as well, right? The movie from the media investment to asset investment, content investment that will perform throughout time, right? And talking about media mindset to content asset, there's two questions about ROI, of course. How do you calculate the ROI of a Content Hub initiative? And what is the best strategy for proving the ROI of investment into content?
Yeah.
I will ask Jonathan or?
Oh, yeah, go on. Sure, go for it.
It's got my name on it, that one, hasn't it? So I think proving the ROI comes back to how you plan the content in the first place. And we have a very lean approach to creating content. We don't want to just throw content out to see what sticks like spaghetti on a wall. We really want to understand with precision what you need to create, who you need to create it, care about it, and you need to get it in front of the right audience at the right time. That involves a huge amount of research even before you type the first word of the first article. Having said that, the planning that goes into that process makes it much easier to then track the performance. And we track things like the traffic you get from it. We track, you know, the number of cookies you generate, which is what many brands are actually going to be monitoring, rather than, you know, sheer numbers of visits. If you have products to sell, direct to consumer on the site, e-commerce, or a sign-up process or a client zone, then these are, of course, the hard KPIs that we would track against that. But crucially, we also look at how you're performing in the market, on the keywords you've targeted, and we look at how you're performing against competitors. So a figure like share of search voice is a critical metric to prove the success of a project.
Good one. There is one interesting question. What makes more sense to focus on quality of the content aesthetically, or the substance of the content in terms of what is being said in it? Which one of the two helps to achieve great engagement for a brand?
You'll get a different answer depending on who you ask that one, but I'll let you.
But I think it depends on the objectives, right? So when we talk about organic search, we're talking about brilliantly written articles. So the aesthetics, visual aesthetics, are less important than you know, the layout is important, of course, but the way it's written is super important. Imagery does play a role, but that's secondary to the actual way that it's written. Then, of course, you know, so you get people to click, they read the article, they love it, they're engaged, and then you want to be kind of pulling them into your site in a bigger way. And there, aesthetics, visuals, video plays a really important role. So it's a journey, right? Brilliantly written article, and then engagement around video and visual on the site to make that, you know, one-off journey a multi-time journey. Fee, does that anything to add?
diplomatically said. I mean, that's true. I mean, I agree with you in a sense that it is important for both, but I think it is a balance, right? Because when there's so many content out there, and when you get to the audience, and the audience land on your page, and they just see, you know, articles, and there's, you know, if there's no visual, it doesn't look nice. I just, you know, I feel that would be, you know, something that people would just, you know, log out or go out, and that's where the bounce rate and stuff like that. But it is important to first land people, so that's crucial part, and then once you get there, the second part, which is, you know, the aesthetic as well. I think it does play a part as a whole, you know, just coming from a creative
I mean, I'd agree with that. Many marketers fall into the trap, and I've, you know, been doing this for 20 years. Ian's been doing it for longer. I'm giving away a secret there. But marketers will obsess about how things look, and that will be their first priority, often to the exclusion of performance, or often to the exclusion of asking the question, how are we going to get this beautiful piece of content in front of the audience? And, you know, I'd like to say, if no one sees it, you'll get zero engagement, no matter how beautiful it is. And to an extent, Google is blind to beauty. If you got Google to rank its criteria, of course it won't because it's very secretive, but if you got Google to rank its criteria and marketers to rank their criteria for what should go into content and where they should spend their budget, I can guarantee those lists would look very different.
Yeah, good one. I think it's a really good conversation, and even though needs to be substantial, needs to be quality, you know, the way that you position the text, that you break the text, needs to be fluid, right? So I think it's a mix, but I would say that without quality, without what Google wants, because it's a bot, it's a robot that he is crawling the internet, billions of websites in milliseconds to give an answer, right? And to give the best answer, right, for what you're asking. So the content, the quality of the answer, on the intent and answer are valuable, definitely more valuable.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't just write rubbish content. And to Ian's point, most content on the on the website, on the web is rubbish. Much of the content that brands pump out is not that engaging for the audience, because it's led by a brand imperative or an internal strapline or slogan. It's not starting with what's going on in the consumer's heads. So that is our starting point. You know, how do users search? When do they search? Why do they search? What do they do next? And I think those are critical questions to ask.
Absolutely. I think we are out of time. We have one question here. There's another question that comes in the Q&A. Regarding data, what are the most important data sets we are going to need on developing a high quality organic content? It goes a little bit with what you mentioned before, Jonathan, on the ROI. What exactly, you know, the data, it goes several different touch points for you to create this right content, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's the basic stuff. There's search data, there's Google Analytics, Search Console, there's SEO tools. I think many of you will know what some of those are, things like Search Metrics, SEMrush. So there's all that stuff, which is your normal stuff. But I'm going to say something sort of slightly radical here as well, which actually supports something that Fia said, and that is we're now starting to use insights from social media as well. Not because you can necessarily get the same sort of hard data about volumes from social media, but certain topics and ideas will trend on social media. And a crucial thing online is to tap into a trend that has strong search volume, but before competitors have figured out that that is a thing users are interested in. So that's my tip for the day, as a cutting edge technique to tap into a form of social listening to power search content as well.
Thank you. We have a few other questions with the, sorry, we are out of time. We will follow up absolutely after this session. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Fee. I really hope we covered everything that you hope to. Thank you, guys.